Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the Justice Appreciating riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. The inquiry into Trudeau's abuse of power with the Emergencies Act culminated with performances by his front bench and himself. Cabinet members felt embarrassed about the protests, and so they should. All it would have taken is for someone to talk to the people whose livelihoods were destroyed over the Liberals' non-evidence-based COVID mandates. It could have been over in one weekend, but as shown in texts by a cabinet member staffer, the Liberals wanted their own January 6, an assault on Parliament Hill. Instead of speaking with protesters, Trudeau went out on the Monday after the first weekend and denounced the people who'd driven across Canada to be heard. It was his comments about people with unacceptable views which inflamed the demonstrations and sparked the border blockades. After making matters worse, Trudeau did what Trudeaus do. He panicked. Just like the way his father panicked during the 1970 October crisis. 2 people had been kidnapped and 1 murdered by a terrorist group. Pierre Trudeau then invoked the War Measures Act, sent soldiers onto the streets, and suspended civil liberties while detaining hundreds of innocent people on the basis of their political views. At the time, a majority of Canadians supported Trudeau Sr. It was only after time and reflection that Canadians came to view the use of the War Measures Act as completely inappropriate. That's why the Mulroney government replaced the War Measures Act with the Emergencies Act. The threshold to invoke the act requires a public order emergency, which contains, quote, the threat or use of acts of serious violence against persons or property, end quote. That's key line. CSIS said they did not see any threats or use of acts of serious violence against persons or property. The RCMP, the OPP, and the Ottawa police never saw serious violence. Remember, the Emergencies Act was created because Pierre Trudeau over-responded to actual terrorists committing actual violence, bomb threats, kidnappings, murder. This is what the act means by serious violence. When Justin Trudeau was asked what the threats of violence were, he said the protesters had brought children to use as human shields. What Trudeau said was disgusting and offensive. It also makes a mockery of his claim that the government truly believed there were threats or acts of violence, serious violence. In the survey conducted during the initial stage of the inquiry, I asked what the chances were of a Trudeau-appointed commissioner ruling that the use of the Emergencies Act was not justified. 85% of respondents said they believed the commission would rule based on evidence. So 15% of those surveyed do not believe Canadians will get a fair shake. Now people want to know if in the unlikely event the commissioner actually rules according to existing non-extrapolated statutes and officially confirms the use of the Emergencies Act was not warranted, what happens? What do you think should happen? Let me know in the comments below. Last week, we learned that an employee with Veterans Affairs had been suspended for encouraging veterans to seek assisted suicide. Veterans Affairs initially denied this happened. Then Veterans Affairs said it was an isolated incident. Finally, the department admitted it had occurred 5 times. And in one case, a veteran was successful in being approved and was provided medical assistance to get the deed done. The case is being referred to the RCMP because it's still a crime to counsel suicide. Apparently, this was lost on the Minister of Justice, fresh off his testimony at the Public Order Emergency Commission, where we learned he had joked about sending a tank to clear out protesters. Lametti went on a Toronto Star podcast. What he said was so shocking, even the Toronto Star was concerned. Lametti said, and quote, "Remember that suicide generally is available to people. This is a group within a population who, for physical reasons and possibly mental reasons, can't make that choice themselves to do it themselves. And ultimately, this provides a more humane way for them to make a decision they otherwise could have made were they able in some other way." End quote. The Toronto Star asked some doctors about the minister's comments. Psychiatrist Derek Smith called Lametti's comments terrible, very distressing, so misinformed, and unbelievable. Brian Mashera, the director of the Center of Research and Intervention on Suicide, Ethical Issues, and End-of-Life Practices, said Lametti is treating MAID as if it were any other medical treatment that needs to be widely available rather than as a measure of last recourse. Trudeau Lemons, the Scholl Chair in Health Law and Policy at the University of Toronto, found Lametti's words very disturbing and said they reflect a normalization of end-of-life practices by medical professionals as a form of inherently beneficial therapy. When the Supreme Court overturned a previous Supreme Court decision in order to legalize medical assistance in dying, the judges dismissed concerns of a slippery slope. When a single Quebec judge ruled that restricting access to MAID was unconstitutional, the Liberals made a decision not to appeal to the Supreme Court. Now we know why. The Attorney General of Canada was greasing the skids. The Liberals are banning Grandpa's hunting rifles. Every firearms owner in the country can see the list of firearms the Liberals plan to ban. Now the Liberals are trying to gaslight Canadians. They're claiming they're not banning hunting rifles. Predictably, the anti-firearm lobby group and media wire service, the Canadian Press, ran the headline accusing conservatives of fear-mongering. The Liberals and their socialist allies are trying to sneak through this ban in an amendment to a bill which was supposed to be about handguns, which was bad enough. Making major amendments to bills at committee is anti-democratic. It's just another example of the double standard. It was a conservative government, the media, if it had been the conservative government pulling off the same stunt, the media would be howling in outrage. Bans on deer and duck hunting guns will cost Canadians billions of dollars. Some of these firearms are rare collectibles worth tens of thousands of dollars. Every single tax dollar spent on purchasing rare collectible duck guns is a dollar that won't be spent saving kids from being shot by gang members. Liberals don't care about kids being killed by gang violence. The Liberals only care about the voices of middle-class, white women in big cities. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant.